Jerry McNeely says civil rights were violated. People illegally detained and police used excessive force.
She's 18 and less than 5 feet tall. Lives with her mom on a BC island. Willow Kinloch is now ready to talk about what police did to her when she was just 15.
This is how they treat innocent people.
Here is the surveillance video of Kinloch at the time, held in a padded cell, her feet and hands bound, tethered to the door. The female guard tells her, "Take off your bra, your shoes." Kinloch kicks one shoe into the corner. The guard grabs her throat. 2 male officers rush in, pin her to the floor, handcuff her. A 3rd officer then arrives with what looks like a leash to tie her feet. They drag her by the strap, secure it outside, and close the door. The family gets a lawyer and sues. The Crown sees this tape and drops the assault charge.
The CBC has obtained new evidence in a lethal Vancouver police shooting, and the head of the Provincial Police Complaints Office says he wants to see it. When the incident was investigated, there was no video available. Now there is, and tonight we're going to show it. We should warn you, some of it is disturbing.
Peter, the shooting death of Paul Boyd near this intersection almost 5 years ago was one of the most witnessed and most controversial police shootings in this city's history. Given that more than 50 people saw what happened that night, it's remarkable there wasn't a frame of video of the actual shooting until now. Paul Boyd had been acting bizarrely, scaring people on busy Granville Street. He had refused to follow police commands. Andreas Bergen of Winnipeg was visiting with some German friends when he heard the shots. This is the first time his video, the only video of the shooting, has ever been seen. Boyd had already been hit by several police bullets and is seen here crawling on his hands and knees towards police. A car blocks the view as the final fatal shot is fired.
It clearly shows that the level of threat was, in my opinion, none when the last shot was fired.
As for why he didn't come forward before this, Bergen says he thought there must be other video, so his wouldn't be needed. But he recently read the officer involved in the shooting had been exonerated.
I kind of felt guilty that I have the tape.
We showed the video. Still, what's not shown on the video is also crucial. Boyd, who is mentally ill and perhaps suffering from paranoia, attacked police, injuring one with a bicycle chain. Several officers first tried non-lethal force to subdue him, and Boyd refused all their commands to back off. Given those other efforts, and the finding that the officer believed his life might be in danger, BC's Crown did not recommend any charges, and the Police Complaints Commissioner backed them up. It's far from certain this video will change any of those assessments, but now it'll be looked at. Peter.
In Vancouver this evening, Chris Brown. Thanks, Chris.
The Federal Minister of Public Safety says new legislation is being drafted to fix the outdated discipline process for rogue Mounties. This comes after the Commissioner of the RCMP appealed for changes to the Police Act to help him rid the force of bad apples. As Natalie Clancy tells us, all this comes amid suggestions of more scandals.
We need to be able to fire some people.
In a preemptive strike, the RCMP's top cop is warning more scandals like the one involving this sergeant are ahead because he inherited a mess when he took office in November. Don Ray was transferred to BC after having sex with subordinates and drinking on the job in Edmonton. Paulson says he could not fire Ray, and that is what must change. In this letter to Canadians, Paulson writes more historical cases and cases already underway will come out and make the news. They are the inheritance of past behaviors and attitudes. I am trying to run a modern police force with a discipline system that was current 25 years ago.
So what is the minister's plan?
In the House of Commons, the public safety minister made a surprise announcement.
We will be bringing forward legislation in respect of discipline in the RCMP, and I hope that member will support these important initiatives.
Right now we have nothing on the table to talk about, and we have no deadlines for when action will actually be taken.
BC's Premier hopes Ottawa moves quickly.
Citizens get incredibly frustrated when we see employees of the public who cannot be fired, apparently no matter what they do. And I don't think that's acceptable.
The opposition says it's sad the RCMP commissioner had to resort to a public plea for changes to the Police Act.
Clearly he and many other members of the force are embarrassed by all of this, and the fact that his inability to be able to appear to do this, to take the kind of action necessary that continues to allow people who have been convicted of sexual harassment, drinking on the job, exposing themselves on the job, to continue to draw a paycheck. Yeah, it's nothing short of a disgrace.
Paulson also referred to the Surrey homicide investigators accused of breach of trust after one of them had an alleged affair with the girlfriend of a suspect in 6 murders. In addition to several sexual harassment lawsuits, Corporal Susan Castaldo was nearly fired after she complained she was forced to have sex with her boss. Her lawyer says Paulson should reveal all the other skeletons in the RCMP's closet.
Why isn't the RCMP coming clean with all these things themselves? Why is it that they have to be discovered by the media? Why aren't the RCMP become more forthcoming and getting ahead of the curve on these things so that they are making the public feel more confident about how they deal with these problems?
In this separate letter to employees, Commissioner Paulson tells Mounties to keep their heads up, shoulders back. Yes, he says more embarrassing news.
Well, for several days in the summer of 2010, parts of downtown Toronto looked like a veritable war zone. Security fences, armed police, and violent, ugly protests in the streets. Today, the long-awaited report into Toronto police conduct that weekend was released, and the independent police watchdog could not conceal his anger. The CBC's John...
Peter, Jerry McNeely says civil rights were violated. People illegally detained and police used excessive force.
It was the largest security operation in Canadian history, but despite thousands of police and millions of dollars spent, it still went violently out of control.
All the people in charge must take responsibility for what occurred in Toronto that weekend.
McNeely's report says hundreds of officers acted professionally under intense pressure that weekend, but many others didn't.
This is in Canada right now?
No. Wow. No. That's right. You're in
G20. The report concludes that some citizens were arrested and subjected to illegal searches simply for walking downtown that weekend. McNeely says police used illegal, excessive force on peaceful protesters and finds they had no real plan to stop the violent ones, despite intelligence that said they would be there. properties and businesses were left unprotected despite specific warnings there would be looting. In some cases, citizens and store employees had to defend themselves. The report reveals at one point the situation was so out of hand, Toronto's police chief called the G20 command center, demanding to know why officers, quote, weren't visible on Yonge Street as it was being ransacked.
Further down the street, we're just getting a little bit boxed in.
But it was this incident that still defines the G20 weekend for many Torontonians. Protesters, journalists, even passers-by were boxed in by police at a downtown intersection. The report says a commanding officer with a desire to, quote, own the streets ordered the tactic known as kettling. McNeely says protesters were secretly called, quote, terrorists, and that not even the senior officers on the ground had control. Some officers began breaking ranks, allowing some protesters to flee. McNeely says they described their commander as, quote, maniacal. A total of 1,100 citizens were arrested that weekend, yet almost all were cleared of any wrongdoing.
There is much in this report to suggest that, frankly, there was, to be frank, mass illegal activity by the police.
Today, a protester who was detained had questions of his own.
What is the justice that I'm going to see? Like the officers who laughed at my wife when she needed toilet paper, or the ones that tried to watch her go to the bathroom.
McNeely says it's now up to police to regain the trust that may have been lost.
Citizens and police themselves will read my report, and they would see that certain things occurred that should not have occurred.
The city's police chief says he's ready to hold any member of his force accountable.
I want to assure you that if there is a finding of misconduct for any police officer of any rank, based on the facts and evidence heard in a tribunal, I am quite prepared to hold people accountable.